Hi guys, I'm Sally with OwlCrate Jr. and I'm here with another middle grade book haul for you. I'm going to start with a handful that I forgot to include in our last one from September, but the rest of these all came out in October and are on bookshelves now, so you can go right out and get them. The first one on my list is Sweep, The Story of a Girl and Her Monster by Jonathan Auxier. Jonathan Auxier wrote The Night Gardener and has gotten all sorts of critical acclaim, and this is no different. It got a Kirkus star and has just been getting rave reviews. It is set in Victorian London at the turn of the century, and 11-year-old Nan is a chimney sweep, which is a very rough life, especially for a kid. And one day she actually gets caught in a chimney fire and is rescued by a creature which is called a golem, which is basically, in a very simplified explanation, is like a soot monster. So the two of them become friends and form this very close friendship and sort of save each other. I haven't quite gotten to the end of this one yet, but I've heard that it has quite a sad conclusion, so I'm not quite sure what's coming, but do not let that deter you. It's a really beautiful story. This one came out in September. Next up is Smoke and Mirrors by Katie Halbrook. I believe that Katie Halbrook is actually first known as a YA author, but this is obviously a middle grade. It is about Sasha, who has grown up in the cirque. Her family, they are acrobats. So her whole life she's grown up in the circus, but her parents have decided that she is old enough to go to school off island from where she lives, and it's the first time she's ever been exposed to non-circus folk, and she has a very rough time of it. There are lots of bullies at this new school, so she starts to feel shame about her weird family, and she's nothing like all these other kids, and then that shame sort of turns into this shadow that is introduced at the very beginning of this book, and it creeps in and actually takes her family away. So she has to reckon with that and figure out where they have gone. And it takes her on an adventure. This definitely has a Wrinkle in Time sort of vibe to it. So if you enjoyed that book, that series, I think you'll really like this one as well. This also came out in September. Next up, we have our final September book for this selection, and that is Begone the Raggedy Witches by Celine Kiernan. So at the beginning of this book, our main character, Mup, her aunt dies, and the Raggedy Witches, who work for the evil queen, come out of the woods to take her family, and they get her father. And then Mup and her mother have to go into this mysterious magical wood to rescue her father. I have not had a chance to read this one yet. It sounds amazing. Celine Kiernan is Irish, and I believe that there is a lot of Irish folklore mixed into this. And it sounds wonderful, and I'm obsessed with the cover of this book, which I know you're not supposed to judge a book by, but if the cover is any indication of what else is inside, we're in for a fun ride here. Next up, we have The House with Chicken Legs by Sophie Anderson. This is about 11-year-old Marinka, who all she wants in life is a real friend, because right now all she has is the house that she lives in, which can play games and do all kinds of fun stuff with her, but is a house. It's not a person friend. The part of the reason that the only companion she has in her life is this magical house is because her grandmother is Baba Yaga, which is the classic fairy tale sort of grandmotherly witch. It sounds great, like a modern retelling or a modern interpretation of a classic fairy tale, and I'm looking forward to diving into this one. This one and all the rest that I will be talking about came out in October. Next up, we have I'm Okay by Patti Kim. This is about Okay, our main character, who is a Korean American boy who's about 11 or 12. At the beginning of the book, his father dies quite suddenly. I believe there was an accident, and just he and his mom are left to pick up the pieces and keep going. So on top of grieving his father, Okay and his mom are having financial difficulties making ends meet. So Okay's mom has picked up several part-time jobs and is working nights. And OK finds out that the talent show at school has $100 prize, which is enough to sort of cover utilities for the month. So he does everything in his power to win this talent show. I believe this was one of the books that was on the middle grade buzz panel for BookCon last year, or earlier this year rather. And it's been getting great reviews, both for, you know, class representation and just diversity, Asian American representation. It sounds really great. I think it was recommended more for like 10 and up, but I will let you be the judge of that yourself. Next up, we have Max Einstein, The Genius Experiment by James Patterson and Chris Grabenstein. This is the first and only middle grade series to be officially approved by the Albert Einstein Archives, which is quite neat. It is all about our main character, Max Einstein, who is a kid genius. She is 12 years old, but she goes to college and she spends her days beating old men at chess in the park and you know, going all over the place in New York by herself. It's a lot of fun. Obviously, all kinds of like great STEM tie-ins and stuff. It's a very science-heavy adventure, and I believe that this is going to be an ongoing series, so definitely check out this first installation. Next up, we have Lily and Kosmo in Outer Space by Jonathan Ashley. This is set in Brooklyn, Earth, 1942. Our main character is Lily, who dreams of growing up to become an astronaut, and then one day, a spacetronaut named Cosmo Kid crash lands his rocket ship right through her kitchen, and thinks that she is a boy because she has chopped off all of her hair the night before. So takes her onto this wild adventure, even though I don't think technically girls are supposed to be going on these fun adventures when this is set. So got some fun like gender stuff going on in there. But the two of them, regardless of gender, have to go and battle the mean man of Morgo to save the universe, of course. It sounds like it's a lot of fun and has been compared to Doctor Who. So if that sounds like a lot of fun to you, check this one out. Next, we have The Dreamway by Lisa Papademetriou. This one sounds weird and creepy in all the good ways. The main character's name is Stella Gray, and her twin brother encounters something strange, I think in a subway line on their way home from school one day, and this something strange sort of stays with him and his personality starts to change. And then soon after this happens, Stella wakes up in the middle of the night to find a talking mouse in her room. And this talking mouse tells her that she has to go into the Dreamway on the nightmare line at night to basically rescue the piece of her brother that's been taken, if I understand correctly. Yeah, it just sounds like creepy and weird in the best way that sort of only middle grade can do sometimes. So we'll see. Next up, we have one that's recommended for a little bit older, more like 10 to 14 instead of 8 to 12. And that is Charlie Hernández and the League of Shadows by Ryan Calejo. This is one I have talked about before. I still have not had a chance to read, but I'm just dying to because the reviews are fantastic. Charlie has grown up with his Mexican grandmother, hearing all sorts of Mexican folklore, and then he sprouts horns and starts to grow feathers. And maybe these stories are more than just stories. And suddenly there's a lot of scary creatures after him. It sounds just like incredibly exciting, full of great characters, and also in the little bit that I have had a chance to flip through and the reviews that I've read, it blends Spanish really seamlessly into the language of the book. So it's sort of every time a new word is introduced, it'll be in italics the first time, and then just goes on from there as it just flows into the rest of the book. I'm so excited to read this one. I think of all of the ones in the stack, this might be the one that I'm going to read next, because it just sounds like a rip-roaring adventure. Next up, we have one for all you dystopian fans out there, and that is Forgotten City by Michael Ford. This is set in a future dystopian Seattle. Our main character is a 13-year-old Kobe who's living with his dad in like the wasteland of Seattle after a virus has swept through. And then his dad goes missing and he sort of has to venture out into the wasteland by himself for the first time, where he meets some other kids who are also fending for themselves and have banded together. It sounds creepy and sci-fi, and if you are into that, check it out. Next up, we have Cat Wolf Investigates, a Wolf and Lamb mystery by Lauren St. John. This is set in a sleepy little seaside town in the UK. Cat Wolf's mum is a veterinarian, and Cat herself has started a pet sitting agency. Things seem very just lovely and picturesque in this town, but there's secrets underneath. So it says on the back, a pet sitting agency, a talking parrot, a life-threatening adventure. I believe this will also be an ongoing series. This is for sure something that I would have just eaten up with a spoon when I was a kid. Animals, mystery, girls poking their nose where they don't belong. It sounds like a lot of fun. Next up, we have The Extremely Inconvenient Adventures of Bronte Mettlestone by Jaclyn Moriarty. So our main character, Bronte Mettlestone, is 10 years old, and she is living with her aunt because her parents sort of dumped her there and ran off to have all kinds of adventures. And then she gets word that her parents have been killed by pirates, which is a very dark way to open the book, but it is a magical adventure. Basically, in their will, they have left behind very strict instructions of what Bronte has to do to follow through on their will, basically. And this is a binding contract that has been embroidered with a fairy cross stitch. So if she breaks the order of things or the timeline of things in this will, catastrophe will happen. So she has to deliver a series of gifts to a series of family members all around this world that they are in. It really reminded me of some like classic sort of Enid Blyton stories that I read as a kid. Just charming fantasy fairy with a lovely British main character. I believe that the final copy is also illustrated, which is always a fun addition. Next up, we have another title that I believe was on the middle grade buzz panel at BookCon this year, and that is Everlasting Nora by Miranda Cruz. So this is about 12-year-old Nora who lives with her mother in Manila's North Cemetery, home to the Philippines' largest shanty town. Nora and her mother lost both their home and their father in a terrible fire. So when her mother mysteriously disappears, Nora searches for her with the help of her best friend Jojo and the support of his kind-hearted grandmother. Along the way, Nora will learn the meaning of compassion, resilience, and family in the most unexpected places. This is another one I'm really excited for. And what I love about this is that in the back, it comes with a glossary of all sorts of Tagalog words, and there is also a reading and activity guide, which is, I really appreciate when books come with that, because you can kind of take the story so much further. Whether you start a book club of your own, or you read it in class, or you just want to sort of dive a little bit deeper on your own, check this one out for sure. Next, we have another one that I have already talked about because I read this one in the lead up to Halloween, and that is The Darkdeep by Condie and Brandon Reichs. This is a very fun, spooky book. Definitely Stranger Things influenced, although not quite as scary as Stranger Things. So if you're not quite ready for Stranger Things, this one will still be okay. Basically, a group of 4 kids, after a bullying event, end up in the Darkdeep, which is this like unexplained sort of sunken island off, like very close to their town. It's always covered in fog and no one goes in, and there's all sorts of mystery surrounding this place. So they go in and find that there is like a cabin in there and maybe like a lab kind of, and I won't tell you much more than that, but it's full of suspense, legitimately spooky in some places, and definitely set up for at least one more book. Next up, we have My Father's Words by Patricia MacLachlan. Patricia MacLachlan wrote Sarah Plain and Tall, which I remember reading when I was 10 in school, so she has been around for a long time. She's a Newbery Award winner. She's really great. As you can see, it looks like it's like a very simple book, and sort of presents like an easy chapter kind of beginner readers sort of book, but there's a lot to her stories. This one is about Fiona and Finn, who are siblings. Their father gets in a car crash right at the beginning, and they lose him, and it's their family just trying to put the pieces back together. One of the things that their mom thinks will help them is to volunteer at the local animal shelter, where they meet 2 sweet dogs. Dog stories are always going to make me cry, so I'm sure this one will. But sort of interwoven with the rest of the story is their father's words and the things that he would always sort of say that you just like, oh, that's just Dad saying. But they start to sort of understand them on a different level. Like I said, it will most certainly make you cry, but I think it sounds like it uses really simple language to approach it, so that it could be a good way to introduce the concept of grief and loss to younger kids, but you can still get a lot out of it as an older kid as well. I'm glad to see that Patricia MacLachlan is still around. Next, we have Journey of the Pale Bear by Susan Fletcher. This one, along with quite a few of the other ones that I'm talking about in this video, got a Kirkus starred review, which is always a good sign in my books. So this is inspired by a real polar bear that once lived in the Tower of London. This timeless adventure story is also a touching account of a bond between a boy and a bear. That's honestly about as much as I know about it, other than it's like young king and his pet polar bear. Yeah, I'm very intrigued. I love polar bears. And I trust Kirkus, so if you do too, check this one out. Next up, we have The Collectors by Jaclyn West. Jaclyn West is the author of the Books of Elsewhere, if you know that series. But this is a brand new series from her. It says most people don't notice Van, but he notices them, and he notices the small trinkets they drop or lose or throw away. That's why his collection is full of treasures. Then one day, Van notices a silver squirrel and a mysterious girl in a big bulky coat diving into a fountain to steal a coin, and they notice Van. So basically, the two people or the squirrel and the girl that he sees are in charge of collecting and containing people's wishes, because wishes that, on birthday candles or coins in a fountain, sort of left uncontained, can spontaneously come true and cause all sorts of chaos. On top of that, I've heard that this is a very good representation of what it's like to be hard of hearing or deaf, which Van is in this book. And apparently it is handled quite well with just sort of ambient noise and what it's like to function in the world when you can't always hear in ways that a lot of people take for granted. So that's just sort of an aside to what sounds like an already great story. So yeah, this is going to be a 2-book series, and it's recommended for fans of Seraphina and the Black Cloak, Circus Mirandus, and the Secret Keepers. Sounds great. Next up, we have The Magicians of Elephant County by Adam Perry. This is about 2 best friends named Duncan and Emma who desperately want to be the next Harry Houdini and just absolutely love magic. So they sneak into the shop of the neighborhood witch, who everyone sort of talks about as a witch, but turns out she's actually a witch. And they accidentally steal her magic wand and hold on to a bit of it, and suddenly they have magic powers, and their magic tricks are going much better than they were before. But it sort of spins out of control fairly quickly, it sounds like. It is told in alternating chapters between Duncan and Emma's point of view. This one has been recommended for fans of Tom Ankelberger and Chris Grabenstein, both of which are very fun, action-packed authors, so definitely pick this one up if you've burned your way through all of their other titles. Next, we have The Lighthouse Between the Worlds by Melanie Crowder. This is set in the Oregon coast, just a little bit south from us here up in Vancouver. So Griffin and his dad are the lighthouse keepers right on the coast. So for the most part, it's just the two of them tending on this, little remote area of land. And then one day, a group of strangers to Griffin show up and seem to know a little bit too much about this lighthouse. So it turns out that there are lots of secrets hidden in this lighthouse and the world beyond it. Griffin's dad is a member of the Society of Lighthouse Keepers, as was his mom, who has been missing for years. So Griffin is then pulled into this adventure, and Griffin has to follow after his dad to solve this mystery and rescue his dad. Sounds really intriguing. I've read the first few chapters of this and look forward to reading the rest of it soon. Next up, we have The Reckless Club by Beth Brabell. This is just straight up a retelling of The Breakfast Club, the classic John Hughes movie from the 80s. So basically, 5 students from 5 different groups in this middle school get in trouble for various reasons and have to agree to the principal's deal, which is that they have to spend their very last day of summer vacation working together in an assisted living home and helping out the people that live in this home. And as long as they agree to this, they can start high school the next day, start afresh, punishment free. Obviously, none of them want to do this. None of them want to give up their last day of summer vacation. But they do, and surprise, surprise, they all find that they actually do have things in common, and it sounds great. I love The Breakfast Club. I think it's nice to see sort of an 80s classic being brought to life once again for the modern age. Next up, we have The Extraordinary Colors of Auden Dare by Zila Bethel. This is another one that I've read the first third of, I would say, but I cannot begin to explain it, so I'm just going to read you the inside cover. Auden Dare has an unusual perspective. He cannot see color, and his life is about to get more difficult. It hardly rains anymore anywhere. Auden's father is away fighting in the water wars. When Auden's scientist uncle dies unexpectedly, he leaves behind a series of notes, which lead Auden first to his classmate Vivi Rookmini, and then to a robot, Paragon. Charming and ingenious, Paragon seems to know everything except what he was built for. As Auden, Vivi, and Paragon try to uncover the robot's purpose, they find out that powerful people are searching for Paragon. It's up to Auden and Vivi to stop them, because the robot's true purpose is bigger and more wonderful than any of them could have imagined. It's really unusual. It's really well written. I definitely recommend you check this one out. I think it's a little bit older. I would say, again, 10 to 14. But yeah, it's just like a really interesting and uplifting in some ways dystopian novel for the middle grade set. There you go. And the very last one on my pile is Ogre Enchanted, which is a companion novel to Ella Enchanted by Gail Carson Levine. I'm so excited about this one. I loved Ella Enchanted so much when I was a kid. If you haven't read the book Ella Enchanted and you've only seen the movie, please do yourself a favor and read the actual book. It is fantastic. So this is the companion book to it. Our main character is Evie, who is a healer in training. I believe she's about 15 years old. Set in sort of undeterminate times, like fairy tale times, days of yore. So she is a healer and she's really good at it. And her sort of bumbling best friend proposes to her, but she's got things to do. She doesn't really want to busy herself with marrying this guy, even though he's a very good friend of hers. So she turns his proposal down, but the fairy in town, Lucinda, hears her turn this proposal down and is just outraged by it. and puts a curse on her and turns her into an ogre. And she has, I think, 62 days to accept a proposal, even though she's now in ogre form. I love it so much. It's great. Her description of what it's like to suddenly like both have her brain and an ogre brain is hilarious. Ogres really like eating flesh, it turns out, so she has to be like, okay, how do I reckon with this and also like do no harm? Oh man, I love this book so much. I was just looking at how many books Levine Carson has written, and there are so many. Ella Enchanted is the one that I know the best, but she's just like the queen of awesome fairy tale retellings. You can tell I'm a little bit excited about this one. Yeah, I just cannot wait for this one to get all the attention that it deserves. And luckily, you can go pick this one up and all of these other ones right now. So that is our latest middle grade book haul. Like I said, these ones are all out on shelves right now. For the most part, they were all released in October, with 3 exceptions that came out in September. I would love to hear which ones you have read or plan to read, or any that I may have missed that have also come out this fall. You can leave those in the comments below. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up and subscribe for more bookish videos every week. Happy reading, and thanks for being awesome.